The Iran-Iraq War was triggered by a series of deeply rooted tensions that built up over decades. One of the main sources of conflict was the disputed control over the Shatt al-Arab waterway, which was crucial for oil exports and trade for both countries. In 1975, the Algiers Agreement attempted to settle this dispute, giving Iran partial control. However, Saddam Hussein later renounced the agreement, claiming it had been signed under Iranian pressure. He sought to reclaim full authority over the region which Iraq considered its rightful territory. Alongside this territorial dispute, the political and religious landscape in the region shifted dramatically after the 1979 Islamic Revolution in Iran. The overthrow of the Shah and the rise of Ayatollah Khomeini alarmed neighboring Arab regimes, particularly Saddam's secular Ba'athist government. Khomeini's open call for exporting the Islamic Revolution to other countries further intensified the fear in Baghdad, especially because Iraq's southern regions housed a large Shiite population that could be influenced by Iran's ideology. Additionally, Saddam saw an opportunity to attack Iran while it was politically destabilized following its revolution. He believed that a swift invasion would lead to a quick victory and bolster Iraq's position as a dominant power in the region. However, Saddam miscalculated Iran's ability to mobilize its population and defend its territory. The war that began in September 1980 with Iraq's invasion of southwestern Iran turned into a prolonged and bloody stalemate that would last 8 years and become one of the longest conventional wars of the 20th century. Saddam Hussein and Ayatollah Khomeini were not just leaders of opposing countries, they were figureheads of conflicting ideologies and ambitions. Saddam aimed to present himself as a strong modern Arab leader who could unify the region under secular nationalism. He used the war to rally domestic support, suppress dissent, and eliminate rivals, portraying himself as the only man who could protect Iraq from Iranian extremism. On the other side, Khomeini viewed the conflict as a holy war, a test of Iran's Islamic revolution. He was convinced that Iran was divinely destined to lead the Muslim world and cleanse it of secular Western-backed rulers like Saddam. The war allowed him to strengthen his grip on Iran by purging secularists, liberals, and opposition groups, using the external threat as justification. Saddam's motivation was largely strategic and political, focused on territorial gains and weakening a neighbor. Khomeini's approach was more ideological, believing that Iran had a spiritual duty to resist oppression, even if it meant enduring long-term suffering. As a result, both leaders were unwilling to compromise. Saddam feared loss of prestige and power, while Khomeini believed that peace without victory would betray the Islamic Revolution. This unwillingness to negotiate on either side ensured the war dragged on with unimaginable human cost and widespread devastation. The Iran-Iraq War became notorious for its unprecedented brutality, especially the use of chemical weapons by Iraq and the mass recruitment of child soldiers by Iran. Facing a larger and increasingly motivated Iranian army, Iraq resorted to chemical warfare as a tactical solution. The Iraqi military deployed agents such as mustard gas, tabun, and sarin in dozens of attacks both on the battlefield and against civilians. These assaults caused thousands of agonizing deaths and left many more suffering from lifelong injuries. The most infamous example was the Halabja massacre in March 1988, where Iraqi planes dropped chemical bombs on a Kurdish town in northern Iraq, killing over 5,000 people, most of them civilians. At the same time, Iran used religious propaganda to mobilize large numbers of teenage and even preteen volunteers. These young boys, called the Basij, were often sent into battle with little training and inadequate weapons. In some tragic cases, they were used to clear minefields with their own bodies to allow regular troops to advance. Martyrdom was glorified in posters, music, and public ceremonies, turning these children into symbols of religious devotion. While Iraq's chemical weapons violated international treaties and norms, Iran's use of child soldiers reflected the depth of its ideological commitment. Both practices shocked the international community, yet global powers failed to act decisively. The muted international response to these war crimes allowed them to continue unchecked, reinforcing the perception that in geopolitics, strategic interests often outweighed humanitarian concerns. Although the Iran-Iraq War was fought between two regional powers, its scope expanded quickly due to the involvement of global superpowers and regional actors. The United States, still reeling from the 1979 Iranian hostage crisis, viewed the Islamic Republic as a major threat. While officially neutral, the U.S. provided Iraq with satellite intelligence, logistical support, and economic aid through indirect channels. American companies also sold dual-use technology to Iraq, much of which had military applications. France emerged as another key supporter of Saddam's regime, supplying Iraq with Mirage fighter jets, missiles, and nuclear components.
The Soviet Union continued selling weapons to Iraq, but remained cautious about fully aligning with Saddam, fearing regional instability. Meanwhile, wealthy Gulf monarchies like Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and the UAE provided Iraq with billions of dollars in financial assistance. They feared the revolutionary ideology of Iran spreading to their own Shiite populations. On the Iranian side, isolation forced Tehran to seek unconventional partnerships, including arms deals with North Korea, China, and covertly even the United States, as revealed by the Iran-Contra scandal. The Persian Gulf also became a new front in the conflict. Both Iran and Iraq attacked oil tankers and shipping vessels, trying to cripple each other's economy. In response, the United States launched Operation Earnest Will to escort Kuwaiti tankers, which escalated tensions further. One tragic outcome of this intervention was the downing of Iran Air Flight 655 by a U.S. Navy cruiser, killing 290 civilians. The international involvement not only prolonged the war, but deepened the geopolitical rifts that would haunt the region for decades. When the war finally ended in 1988, after nearly 8 years of intense combat, neither Iran nor Iraq had achieved a clear victory. The conflict left over 1 million people dead, economies shattered, and societies deeply scarred. Iraq had launched the war in hopes of a swift triumph, but found itself in a devastating quagmire. Saddam Hussein's regime emerged severely weakened financially and politically. With debts exceeding $80 billion, primarily owed to Gulf countries, Saddam turned to aggression once again, leading to the 1990 invasion of Kuwait. That act triggered the Gulf War and further isolated Iraq internationally. Iran, though victorious in resisting Iraq's invasion, was also left in ruins. Cities and infrastructure in western Iran were destroyed, and its economy, already suffering from sanctions, was pushed to the brink. However, the war also helped the Islamic Republic solidify its hold over the country, using the conflict as justification to suppress dissent and centralize power. Both nations lost a generation of young men and endured years of poverty and trauma. The war's legacy also shaped future foreign policies. Iran became more determined to build asymmetric military capabilities and proxy networks across the region, while Iraq became increasingly belligerent and unpredictable under Saddam. The war intensified sectarian divides, increased militarization, and fueled decades of instability in the Middle East. It taught Iran and Iraq and the world at large that regional conflicts, when fed by ideology, foreign interests, and unchecked ambition, can spiral into prolonged tragedies with consequences that last far beyond the battlefield.